Hey there, superhumans. Welcome to Red May tip number 14 here with Christina from Trailside Physio. She's back again. Last week we talked about just lower leg resiliency and kind of how to identify shin splints and some stuff you could do. And Christina is back to help us identify some issues coming up in our Achilles, how we can prevent them or know you're at risk and what we can do. So thank you so much, Christina, for, again, carving some time out of your busy day to chat with us about Achilles.
Yeah, no problem. It's exciting.
All right, so maybe one of the first things we can talk about is like how to know where you are on the spectrum. And you and I just had a brief chat kind of talking about this stuff, and we kind of figured out that there's like you're at risk, but you might not know it. Like you don't have any symptoms, or you're totally full blown into acute, you called it. So can you help us identify how to know whether you're in sort of at risk category or an acute category?
Sure. Your acute category is that person whose Achilles is painful to touch. It may be swollen. It hurts when you're going down the stairs. It hurts when you stretch it. It hurts when you do a heel raise, obviously contracting the calf. It's red hot. It's ready to go. That's
Ouch.
your Achilles. Yeah, it feels like trash. That is when you need to come see me, really.
Right.
So they can get it under control before it, becomes a long-standing thing.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So like, and I should mention this just in case you're new to identifying where your Achilles is. It's that like cord-like thing on the back of your ankle, right? And so if that part of your body is feeling, you said it's like swollen, sort of the touch, it's like thicker. If you look at them and if you're not sure how thick it's supposed to be, I mean, some people might not know, but even maybe just looking at one compared to the other, and if one looks like more red or thicker, then you could be having some stuff going on. You probably know. It sounds like you would know if you're in this acute stage, right? By the symptoms that you're having, you're kind of dealing with it all the time, right?
Yeah, it's pretty clear to whoever's suffering through it, and that
Right.
Achilles runs from the back of your calf. It's that thick tendon back there. It actually runs very low down, almost to the bottom of your heel.
Okay.
So you can feel that all the way down the back of your heel. So uh, it's pretty clear when it's angry.
Okay. So
Yeah.
if you're in that category, just basically stop what you're doing. Like, are we giving recommendations of how to help those people, or what's the best thing that they can do?
At that point, you really need to rest it. Get ice on it. You really just need to get it under control before you turn it into like a several month long injury.
Okay, so essentially just stop what you're doing and go see Christina. And by the way, you guys, Trailside Physio is going to be open on Tuesday, and so you can start booking appointments. Is that true? Let me make sure that I can.
Yeah, we are. We've been cleared to reopen as of Tuesday, May 19th. We are already booking up. So if you need help,
Yeah. So
call
if
the
you're in that category, stop what you're doing, start icing it, and make an appointment, and that way you're not going to make it worse. And even if you're doing the right things, just get some kind of feedback about that. So let's talk about the other categories, which is basically your high risk people. And these are either people going to be, they've never had Achilles tendonitis before, but they're starting a new activity. Maybe Red May is their first, introduction to daily activity, or who knows. Let's talk about, what things in their body might help them identify that they're in a higher risk category. And also, there you are. You tried to leave the conversation, but you're back. And also people who've previously had either been in the acute Achilles tendonitis or they've had some sort of issue before. So tell us about how you would know you might be higher risk.
Yeah, that high risk person, like we talked about last week, maybe the person who's missing ankle range of motion, or has tight calves all the time. Those are, big risk factors that can be easily addressed. Or maybe you're somebody who's had Achilles tendonitis in the past. Anytime we've had that, it kind of just increases your risk factor. Doesn't necessarily mean you'll get it again, but it's something that we shouldn't ignore, especially if you're ramping up for Red May and you're training more. It might be ideal to check in on your range of motion and do something.
Right on. And if you guys tuned in, whoa, almost kicked the camera. If you guys tuned in last week, Christina gave us some really great tips on how to do a self ankle range of motion assessment at home and what guidelines to look for. So you might need to start there just to see if you are at risk for developing Achilles tendonitis, because we talked about it and you said it could take sometimes up to 3 to 6 months, to recover. So it's definitely something you want to prevent. You have the opportunity to. So do your ankle range of motion assessment. Check out Christina's previous video. We have that posted both on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. You can check out both of those areas for Christina's ankle assessment. And then also we had talked about if you aren't currently doing foot and ankle resiliency work, which is a fancy way of saying if you're not intentionally doing things that that are designed to increase the strength of your Achilles and calf and foot structures, then you're probably also at risk. If you're over what age?
You know what? I don't have a research-based number for this. I didn't look it up. A lot of kind of that age range that I see in the clinic that seem to be higher risk, that I see a lot, is kind of that 35 to 50 age range.
Totally. And we see it in the gym too. And, like I really value Christina is a scientist and she really wants to be able to support everything. I appreciate that about her too, but she has been practicing for like more than a decade now, and our experience and what we see in the field is highly valuable. And we see it in the gym too. The risk factor for even Achilles rupture over the age of 40, it's just like when your muscular strength exceeds the tensile strength of your tendon, it just is the perfect storm, right? So we tend to see people who don't have any symptoms, all of a sudden, like it comes on fast and furious. So if essentially you're in your mid 30s and you're active or you're not active, you're at risk and you should be doing something to prevent like this stuff in the future, whether you plan to be active or not, because even Achilles rupture can come from the things you least expect, like a just quick pivot to grab your kid and all of a sudden it's like, boom, it's gone, right? So you're at risk if you have reduced ankle range of motion, you're starting a new activity program, or you're essentially 35 and north of that.
We're all hooped.
So welcome to all of us, right? Let's also talk about, when we're talking about risk factors, is what type of, what kinds of training might predispose somebody to seeing Achilles tendonitis?
You know what? In Vancouver, we've got a lot of hills everywhere. So if
Okay.
Red May is your first time starting to run this spring and you decided to do, all of the hilly trails of Burke Mountain as your start, then you may feel that a bit more in your calves and your Achilles than if you had started running the dikes in Poco where it's a bit flat and gravelly. So I see that quite a bit. If you decided that, I'm going to do the Coquitlam Crunch every day and I've just decided to walk uphill or do those stairs every day, like that may strain your calves more than, again, if you had picked flat ground. It's just kind of, did we ramp up appropriately to what we wanted to do? So yes, you can go do those things, but maybe see how you do flat ground first before going all the way into your extreme mode.
Right on. So there's essentially, it's the age-old recipe for disaster, which is too much too soon, right? Yeah. It's like if you weren't doing any impact related activity, or you were just getting started and you were maybe moving your body in a running or cycling or whatever, hiking, once a week, and now you've joined the Everyday in May challenge and your volume has increased. We've been talking about this with our members and the challenge participants is that sometimes we try to make everything a workout as opposed to being able to kind of scale and dial back what's just a daily movement and a low intensity effort versus a high intensity effort. So some people, just the fact that they've gone from maybe once or twice a week to every day is a significant volume. And then for some people, the environment. So you and I are like sports scientists, so we think of like running in hilly territory as something that would do intentionally, and we call it hill work, right? Like it would be a hill work, workout. But some people unintentionally, just like if you live on a hill and you're thinking, I want to join in this initiative, and I like it because it's convenient, it's close to home, I don't need any equipment, but because you live on a hill, like you're, in North Van, so you just go for a run and you're on a hill, and not thinking about that and just doing even just light, short runs. But if it's you don't have a base and you're starting, on graded territory, that's going to have a huge impact on how quickly you might develop symptoms when you didn't even know you had any precursors, right? So I think that's really important, especially for some beginners, to identify what kind of area that they might actually like have to plan to drive or bike or walk to an area that's flat to start their training, and slowly introduce the hill training over time. And then we briefly mentioned, we're going to dive into this, but like footwear too. And while that seems to be a bit of a lower risk thing, again, too fast, too soon, if you get into, you're into maybe some running resources and you hear that minimalist footwear is like, born to run, and you go from your big cushy shoes into something that doesn't have anything, and you didn't make any training modifications for it, then all of a sudden, bam, you're getting some symptoms. So it all boils down to too much too soon, either too much activity before you're ready, too many hills before you're ready, or too aggressive with shoe or footwear or surface change before you're ready. So we have our like anatomical things, either just the way that your foot is built or the range of motion that you have. If you haven't been training your ankle, you're at risk. If you're ramped up your volume, you're at risk. Now let's talk about what people can do, where they need to start in order to prevent this or to start recovering if there's some early indicators or if they've had it before.
Yeah, you know what, I would say the first thing is to really, if you can't prevent it, if you can't prevent Achilles tendonitis, is figure out now, where are you at in that kind of stage of injury. If it's fiery, if it's acute, if it's all sorts of swollen and painful, then come and get physio. Like, let's just make this an easy process to recover from. If you are, hey, this only hurts me a little bit at the beginning of my run, and then it hurts, and then it's fine throughout my run and the rest of my day, and then it hurts in the evening, you're kind of in that subacute phase, and that's where you can kind of manage things on your own, maybe a little bit. And that's where I would say you need to roll and stretch your calves. And you can start some heel raises. I wouldn't necessarily go right to doing the ones off the edge of the step. I know that's very popular to see on Instagram and Facebook and all the, but that may be a little too soon.
Right, Dr. Google. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Google has been great, but unfortunately it doesn't always explain what stage of recovery you're in. And if you were to do that off the edge of the step when you're in that fiery Achilles, you may be just aggravating it more. But if you are, in kind of that subacute phase where like you can run out of the pain, then you can start doing heel raises with an emphasis on slowly lowering back to that neutral position. But I would start on the ground. Don't start on the step.
Okay,
if you can
so
do 3 sets of 10 to 12, or 3 or 4 days in a row without increasing your symptoms, not just during but also after, make sure there's no aftermath from that, then you can progress to, can you do that off the edge of the step, which allows you to drop more into that stretch range, and then you can start to progress from 2 legs to 1 leg and that sort of a thing. But I wouldn't just go to the biggest thing you see and the coolest thing you see.
I like what you said about, just jump back 2 steps into the assessment phase, going like, how often do you feel pain? Yes or no? And then how often is the pain? Is it, in the morning or at the end of the night, but manageable most of the time? If you fall into one of those two categories, you're good to go to start the program, to start a home program. If it's anything more than that, go see Christina. And when you're starting your home program, I think an invaluable tool is just looking on YouTube for Achilles exercises doesn't really give you the benefit of having the right exercise progression for the stage that you're at. And we see this in fitness all the time, is that people are constantly pursuing a more advanced exercise because they feel like it gives them better benefit, but the best exercise for you is the one that meets you where you're at and considers what you've done previous to that. And that's why you can, in my opinion, you can never outgrow the benefit of a plank exercise. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that to give you benefit. And so, with a heel raise, starting, you and I were talking about, and you'd mentioned the fact that it's an endurance muscle. So, and especially with tendinopathy type stuff, like higher repetition is part of a protocol in creating resiliency. So doing some higher rep stuff between 10 and 15 repetitions at a controlled range of motion from the floor up, I think is a great place for people to start in both prevention and from the recovery standpoint. If you have, kind of medium to mild symptoms. And then you were talking about once you can do kind of, 3 sets of up to 15 reps, kind of 3 to 4 days in a row without pain. I'd advise, from a strength coach perspective, that people are spending a minimum of like 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks at sort of like a daily or every other day kind of effort, medium effort, building that base before we decide to increase the range of motion. And this is where you mentioned you might put your feet on the edge of a step. You're doing your heel raise, but now you're a hyper range of motion, so your heels drop below the step. Drive through their big toes and keep the ankles facing forward over their midfoot as opposed to collapsing out to the side. So we increase range of motion, keep the prescription the same, and then slowly try to work our way from 2 feet to 1 foot, doing the same kind of protocol where you'd go then back to on the ground and then to the increased range of motion. And then what can they do after that once they've mastered? That might take them like 6 or 9 weeks to get to a single leg, with a step. Then what can they start to do after that? What do they progress to next?
I mean, you can really start to add in a bit of a speed component, because we are trying to get you guys back to, running or plyometrics or things that are fast. Like you guys are, not just running right now, but when you do get to go back to doing some of the workouts that you guys are posting on your Facebook page, or when you can actually get back into the gym, like it's not, we need some reaction to your calf, and you need to be able to make that quick step if you stumble, and you need to be able to handle things like that are fast. So that's when I kind of get people just, can you bounce kind of in this mid-range where your heels don't get to touch the ground anymore, but can we kind of flutter in this spot there?
Right. So you're imagining, so it's kind of like skipping, except for your feet don't actually leave the ground. So it's like a really almost quick and reactive heel drop, but you don't actually end up airborne.
Yeah, I kind of use it as a precursor to necessarily jumping, and that sort of thing. And then I take people jumping, and then we can make things look quite a bit more even like a workout that you would do at Envision with these guys. Is, what can you get your calves to manage and balance and that sort of thing.
Awesome.
But at that point, I would almost say like just, check in with either Carrie and Steve, because they know where to take it at that point. Or if you have questions, you can even just shoot me an email and I'll just respond. Like,
And that's a great point. Why don't you remind us of what your email address is, so anybody following along with this that has questions about more detail, they can connect with you. So it's
so my email is Christina S@trailsidephysio.com. And I would just say, if you're just unsure and you want to shoot me an email, I have no problem answering all your questions that
Awesome.
way.
Very generous.
Or if you do want to come into the clinic, that's great. I would love to see you there as well. But I have no problem just, giving you a better or maybe a more thorough explanation for those that need it. No problem.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, Christina. And for everybody who's watching, you can check out our YouTube channel, Envision Fitness. We got some more videos on Christina and our previous interview, and Steve's doing lots of content too on ankle resiliency stuff. So check that out if you haven't had a chance already. And Christina and I will be back next week talking on more expansion on all things Red May and injury prevention related. So thanks again, Christina, for coming out today. Appreciate it, and we will see you next time.